Ladies, gentlemen, and everyone in between, that hot take, Apple bad. I know, dangerous takes to keep you awake at night, but I feel like everyone and their granny already knows that Apple is a bunch of weenies, and I don't know if you've read the sign, but we don't allow those in this establishment. Whether it's Apple's anti-right to repair, how they started using glue on phones instead of screws so you couldn't manifest your inner handy-manny and fix the phone at home, you had to take it to an Apple store to get the true and authentic Apple experience of a perfectly siphoned wallet, or Apple's whole green bubble dilemma, how they were kicking their feet in the air and having a fit like a child in the Walmart who didn't get the new Mr. Beast chocolate bar because they didn't want to make it easy for Apple and Android to have text message communications. Probably because they didn't want people to buy Android, because that would just be inconvenient at that point. Like, how am I gonna FaceTime Grammy Mo now? Not like I can get her on Discord. She doesn't know how to use that shit. And don't even get me started on the price range. Do you see the Pro stand and a monitor stand that is $1,000? I don't give a shit how modular it is. I'm not buying a $1,000 piece of plastic. Nah, just nah. There's also another thing on their website for wheels. $700 wheels? Are you high? Apple, you gotta catch a stray meteor, dude. There's no other option. But now, let's add another thing to this list of reasons Apple is a bunch of weenies, and it's so bad that even Elon Musk came out saying it was a bad move. Who would have thought? Even the devil says you're evil. That's probably a bad sign. And this is, of course, something attacking not just artists, but all people, really. But artists are a big victim in this situation. And it all revolves around a new fee that Apple's been putting forward to specifically affect Patreon, which is probably a website you've heard of before. Let's be real. I mean, if you've been on YouTube, you've probably watched a video where someone's like, subscribe to my Patreon, I want money, which is fair. Money is fun. It does cool things like buying V-Bucks on Fortnite, which, I mean, what is a man supposed to do? The Peter Griffin skin's gonna release in the item shop soon. Am I supposed to rob a bank? But for those of you sitting in the back row, scratching your head, still confused at what Patreon is, I'm just gonna do a quick, concise description of what it is. It's a site where you pay creators. It's not exactly a website you go to like, who am I gonna give my money to today? It's a website where you actually just find it linked to another content creator you already know, and you click on it and you pay them. A good example is CoffeeZilla. I have his up right now, where you can go and you can join for free, but pay him $5 a month just to support his business. And I think that's great. I think it's reasonable. Patreon only takes around 8 to 12% of each purchase, which in comparison is really nice when you look at like Twitch, who takes 50% of a sub, what? Or YouTube, who takes 30% of YouTube memberships. But of course, that should never deter you from becoming a member of this beautiful channel right here. Please? And so what does this Scrooge McDuck of a company Apple have to do with this situation? How can they ruin it for us this time? Well, it all comes from an announcement that Patreon dropped just yesterday saying Apple's requirements are about to hit creators and fans on Patreon. Here's what you need to know. And I'm just going to cover some of the key points. I'm not going to read the entire thing because you're not here to read. Reading? People still do that? One of the big points that was mentioned in this article is just the fact that a 30% App Store fee to all new memberships purchased in the Patreon iOS app is being added. And so it's not affecting old Patreon subscribers, it's just affecting anyone who decides to buy a new sub in the app. And that's great. That's cool. So we're unaffected if we've already had a ongoing subscription, except you're not. Apple decided to drop a big fat stinker of a second part to this update, where Patreon said that any creator currently on the first of the month or per creation billing plans will have to switch over to subscription billing to continue earning on the iOS app, because that's the only billing type Apple in-app purchase system supports. So they're too confused to operate on possibly per creation, like every time a project drops you pay. Instead, it has to be monthly, because that's the one Apple knows how to do, and they can't change things up because that would be too difficult. They would be earning their money at that point. That's just silly. It's like you're in a track race and a guy with one leg joins, but he owns the entire stadium, so everyone else has to run with one leg. That's so cool. I love that. And Patreon's been doing everything in their power to try and help their user base because they recognize that Apple's being a greedy little bitch, and they dropped one part of the announcement saying that they put an optional tool that can automatically increase your prices only in the iOS app to offset the cost of Apple's fees. Essentially saying like, okay, so if you buy a sub on the Patreon app, it'll be 30% more expensive because that way the artist you're getting the sub for is still making the same amount of money otherwise. But that's still so irritating. That's still bending a knee to a company who's just squeezing money for the sake of squeezing money. Even Patreon realizes this is a whole bunch of malarkey. They say in the article as well that neither of the solutions are ideal, but remember, Apple's fees are only in the iOS app. So if you want to have the OG prices, don't use the app. That's not them saying it. That's me saying, don't use the app. Don't support Apple. Because the thing is, these fees, like, they've got to come for some reason, right? Like, oh, Apple's probably spending so much money and working so hard to run this app store for us, except they're not. 30% is a made-up number. They made that number. They pulled it out of their ass completely because they wanted to make money, and they were inspired by Valve. Yeah, Valve. The Steam guys, the Games on My Pooter company, they're actually the ones who initially came up with this 30% fee, and it initially existed for a good reason. See, back in the day, before PlayStation got rid of their disc port, there was this archaic system where you could get a disc, a CD, a round thing with a hole in it, kind of looked like a donut, and it would be in a box that you'd usually get at an archaic temple that went by the name of GameStop. And what you'd do is you'd buy that, and companies, before you go and buy that, would have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to have their game put on a disc, have the disc put in a box, have the boxes put into game stores, and then they sit by their bedside every night and pray to the Lord above that hopefully someone buys that game and they make a positive return on their money. And then Gabe Newell and Steam hovered down from the heavens above and was like, Steam. And it was a really good way to describe it. They were like, hey guys, we'll let you, instead of buying all that disc space, just put it online. You can just put it on our little pooter, and we'll just take a 30% fee, because that way you're spending less money. And it's probably a better return anyway. And companies were like, holy W, okay, all right, sure. However, over time, people realized it was so much more economically friendly to do that instead of put them on discs. And so now, first of all, physical media is dying, which is a horrible thing. We love to see that. But also, the whole idea that this fee doesn't need to exist anymore. It's only getting easier and less expensive to host games on servers. So the fact that we're putting more money into it, and the fees are staying the same doesn't add up. And Apple saw this overinflated system that had no need to exist and was like, holy shit! That's a good idea. And since then, Apple's been taking every app in their app store and putting it to the orange squeezer. The squeezer, the thing you put the orange, I don't know what it's called, that thing. They've been squeezing every single penny they can out of every app. Clash of Clans elixirs, 30% of that money's going to Apple. Or I saw one chart about Roblox. Apparently every $100 a Roblox creator gets, Apple makes 90. Or with a personal instance, Spotify. I had to make a Spotify premium account because I like listening to funny tunes and beats. And so I wanted to set up an account, but to set up a premium account, I had to get my computer out and set up the account on there, because if I set it up on my phone, I'd be spending 30% more every single month. And now we have Patreon, the newest victim to this situation, who's managed to skirt by without having to deal with these fees for a really long time. One of the CEOs of Patreon had this theory that the reason Apple never actually came after them in the first place was the fact that you don't go to Patreon for a product, you go there to aid someone who already has a product elsewhere, so there's no point. But I think eventually Apple realized how much money they were missing out on and realized they had to be evil, because that is what they do. But I think the craziest part of all of this lore is that this goes deep. This goes long. This is not what she said. There was a video that dropped from Epic Games 3 years ago, today on the dot, called 1980 Fortnite. You might have seen some of these clips throughout the video, memed to death, because it is a funny video. It's a joke on the whole 1984 meme, but it had an important message at the end. Epic Games has defied the App Store monopoly. In retaliation, Apple is blocking Fortnite from 1 billion devices. Join the fight to stop 2020 from becoming 1984, with the whole message being that Apple was charging them 30% for V-Bucks when Apple is already a $1 trillion company and doesn't need the money in the first place. To be fair, neither does Epic Games. It's billionaire versus billionaire right now. Let's just put them in a coliseum and we'll figure it out that way. I know the first thought people have is, you don't like Walmart? Go to Target. Well, in this situation, unfortunately, Walmart put a bunch of bear traps out front of Target, so you can never go there anymore because Walmart's the only safe bet now. It's the situation that Apple's been getting under fire for relatively recently. The whole idea that if there are third-party app stores out there, but to get them, you need to literally sacrifice 3 of your limbs to a pagan god. There's a thread that I saw on Twitter from the user xroinsence that says it takes 15 clicks to install an app from the web using a newly proposed Apple flow. Here's the journey, and takes us through all the steps, saying you visit the website for a download link, click on a unique deep link, encounter a warning about an unknown provider and click learn more, navigate to the Apple support page for instructions, find allow installation section in settings, encounter another warning screen, use Face ID, wonder where you were and go back, tap install the app, yada yada yada. About 7 more steps afterwards, because Apple wants to make it impossible for anyone to do anything that isn't giving them 30% of everything they earn. And now, if you would allow me, I'm going to throw a curveball so hard it's going to turn your wrist into a fine powder. The US government has gotten involved. Yes, you've heard me right. Uncle Sam, the boys in red, white, and blue are tired of all this monopoly malarkey and decided to do something about it. In a case that was posted earlier this year on the Office of Public Affairs, the Justice Department sues Apple for monopolizing smartphone markets. And this focuses primarily on what we've talked about throughout this video, but a plethora of other issues as well. Like how they've been diminishing the functionality of non-Apple smartwatches, or how they've been excluding cross-platform messaging apps, which is the green bubble dilemma we talked about earlier in this video. And that case resulted in Apple allowing third-party stores, but still, as up to this day, they're extremely difficult to access, which is why Patreon's currently suffering at the fact that they have to deal with the App Store and this 30% fee, which is just taking money for the sake of taking money. There is no actual inherent reason to. It, as we talked about, it was a number they completely pulled out of their rectum. Overall, I guess the message to take away from this video is Apple bad. Wow, it's almost like I started the video by saying that. Now, what do I recommend you do? Well, first of all, spread the word. Let people know. You could share this video if you want, but of course you could also go on Twitter and share some tweets because there's a lot of information out there talking about this. But I would appreciate if you shared the video. But the other big thing would just be don't buy things on an iPhone. Just don't. Like if you're buying something online for a subscription for a game or something, save it until you get to a computer. You're gonna be saving money and also not putting money somewhere that doesn't deserve it. Like, you know it's scummy when Apple has a gag order on developers who put their apps on the App Store where they're not allowed to mention that you would save money by buying it on a computer because Apple doesn't want to lose money. Money that they've done nothing to earn, by the way. And that's about it for now. I'm gonna go celebrate my friend's birthday, so everyone say happy birthday, Ryan, if you've made it this far in the video, and thank you for being here. Sorry I was gone a few days. I've been sick and also really uninspired. So if you have any other ideas and news you want me to talk about, let me know. I'm tired of covering Predators. I'd like to talk about fun things for a change. But for now, I'm gonna be hitting the road. So thank you for being here. Like the video if you liked it. Subscribe if you are new to stick around for whatever I make next. And as always, adios, arrivederci, goodbye, good night, and suck on these, Apple.